Hi, today my research's title is Strategies to Enhance the Participation of Visually Impaired Visitors in London Museums, and I will use PVI instead of the visually impaired people in following. We know museums play an important role in PVI's life, like encourage learning and education, promoting the social well-being of the visually impaired community. And the museums now offer a variety of measures to enhance the experience for PVI, but traditional accessibility measures all have their shortcomings. And with the development of computer science, various digital technologies have emerged to increase accessibility. But whether museums should move toward high technology in the future and gradually replacing traditional measures with new technologies. And to find the answer is my research's aim. Our next slide, please. Firstly, I want to introduce some current traditional means and their limitations. This based on literature review and interview with people. The first is Braille, and it's a very traditional measure. PVI needs systematic learning and experience in reading Braille. But the proficiency of Braille is low in developing countries, and some of the Braille are placed in a corner. Visitors will waste a great deal of time searching. The second is model touching. The collection prepared is often not the most valuable, as touching may cause the risk of damaging the collection, and the copy will relate to the original's copyright. The third is audio guidance. They cannot accurately cover the meaning of the artwork. It is also noted to prevent visitors from socializing with their peers in the museum, locking them into an isolated experience. And the fourth is museum websites. There is a dearth of information on websites, but it's challenging for PVI to acquire exhibition information in advance. The fifth is museum staff. Staff descriptions can only be provided at special times and dates and must be booked in advance. Also, there is a lack of professional service training for museum staff. And the next slide, please. The solution offered all had their disadvantages. It seems that the use of technology can enhance their experience. And here are some new measures. The first is digital Braille. By using QR codes to mark objects in the museum, visually impaired visitors can use their mobile phones to scan items with QR codes, and visitors do not have to spend reading paper. The second is interactive audio. Through the use of touch and motion, visitors can freely explore the exhibit while listening to verbal descriptions and audio. The third is digital model, such as 3D printing, are currently being developed by museums, which can be an optional solution to increase access to artworks for PVI. And the fourth is an application like Be My Eyes, which allows members of the public to assist PVI, and the application allows new connections with other residents in the community, helping PVI lead more independent lives. And the next slide, please. And this is my research question and methods. The first is, what are the current situation and shortcomings of existing accessibility facilities? This based on the literature research and the material from the museum website and my own field work. To prevent the research from being too broad, I decided to use place boundaries. The main research focus was museums in the London area. It had been recognized that people who have always enjoyed art do not lose interest because of blindness. Therefore, representative museums with art and socially relevant themes were the choice of focus in research. I chose the British Museum and the V&A Museum. The second question is, what improvement measures can be proposed to increase the accessibility of museums and increase the participation of PVI in museums? And this based on the literature review, online interviews with each participant. In order to better analyze the current situation and propose measures, the standard for selecting participants in the study are people related to the field of accessibility. They were divided into 3 types of participants: those with visual impairments who can speak about their experience of museum visits, those who work in museums that provide facilities for the disabled, and those who work with the visually impaired. In a word, the more important methods are field work and interviews with relevant people. And qualitative research uses data collection methods such as interviews, case studies, personal experience to explore meanings and to understand the world. Because I summarized the experiences and feedback from different participants through in-depth interviews, therefore, the qualitative research method was the most appropriate way to answer the research questions in my research. Next slide, please. And this is a photo I took from British Museum and the V&A Museum. Some are from the website. I found Braille, large print, audio guides, and model touching. And for British Museum, because of the pandemic, there were no touch towers and admission showers. Audio descriptions were found in the galleries, and the Braille, large print, accessible lifts, and volunteer services were still evident. Next slide, please. And these are people I interviewed. John is Catherine's mom, and she was a psychologist with Enable Ireland Child, and she has introduced me to many of her friends and has helped me a lot. And I emailed the RNIB myself, and they helped me find participants on the Facebook group. And each type of sample was 3, a total of 9, and they are all over 18 years old. Through online interviews, the questionnaire design referred to the museums mentioned in the relevant literature and the field investigation experience. And next slide, please. And here are some interviews organized by different accessibility measures. And this is an example, like current situation and commands. And I did a lot of collections like these. And the next slides. And these are my findings. The classification of accessibility measures in museums is based on our researchers' classification and my own understanding in the course of my research. The first is interpretability of the collection. I divided it into 5 items. The first is Braille. They are very popular and is a traditional common method of interpreting collections. But the disadvantages are they take too much time and not everyone is proficient. And it is gradually being replaced by digital. And this agrees with the previous literature. And as for model touching, 3 out of 9 interviews agreed that these measures would enhance the experience, while 1 disagreed. And it can provide a better feel than text and help the PVI examine and composition of large objects. But someone mentioned they are expensive and not very meaningful to experience. And as for audio guidance, all 7 participants showed a positive attitude toward audio guidance. They should be continued to use as a traditional measure. And this is a survey in the V&A Museum, which of the following would have helped make your visit more accessible? Found that 7% of people choose audio information and 2% choose audio described events. The sum of audio guides was the most selected of the measures listed. And the workshop, all participants agreed that the workshop improves the active thinking and hands-on skills. The new technology, the museums interviewed used more in terms of technology to interpret the collections, and the use of QR codes was the more common technology. And next slide, please. The second is physical accessibility. As for museum staff, 7 participants mentioned that the importance of museum staff, and all 3 museums interviewed have systematic training for their staff, but it tends to focus on general skills. For websites under Roach, all visually impaired participants used the internet, but they didn't have an excellent browsing experience, and the page design needs to be further improved. And museums usually use different floor tiles and caps to distinguish between different functional areas. And the third is exhibitions and education. British Museum works with artists and people with disabilities. The V&A Museum held regular talks for the visually impaired people, but they did not want to be treated separately. So set special time slots for them may be a good way. As for information exchange, the V&A Museum interacts with other museums and heritage departments to share best practice. Some museums have educational cooperation with local universities. And next slide, please. And these are suggestions based on the findings. The first is offer different options in terms of text interpretation. The museums can offer Braille in different formats and various options such as Braille, large print, digital files. The second is maintain and update the audio guidance. The audio guide reduces the stress of having to be accompanied by staff at all times, and also provides more flexible options, allowing visitors to visit their favorite exhibitions at their own pace. The third is update individual web page information for visually impaired visitors, like links can be placed on pages accessible to the general public, designed especially for PVI with enlarged text, clear dark fonts, and direct text. The first is increase the training of accessibility awareness of staff, but museums have large teams. For example, the British Museum has over 1,000 employees and over 600 volunteers. In subsequent studies, museums should develop management models with systematic management. The fifth is provide workshops and work with local communities, schools, and artists with disabled people. Next slide, please. And these are conclusions for my study. Traditional measures such as Braille and audio guides are therefore still popular, so they reach a wide audience and remain the mainstay of museum accessibility. With the use of technology in the internet, the future of museums should move in the direction of high technology. That's all. Thank you.